Now we have a last concept called variation. Now who can tell me what variation is? What is the general meaning of variation? Who can tell me? Anyone? Okay. Listen to me very carefully. If I say that there are two quantities, I have any two quantities, say A and B. Variation basically tells us the relationship that these two quantities have and how one changes with the other. As simple as that. For example, if I have 10 rupees, I can buy 5 apples. So if I have 20 rupees, can't I buy more number of apples, guys? Don't you guys agree? Because of one changing, the money that I have in my pocket, the other thing also changes. What is the other thing? The number of apples that I can buy. Is that clear? With 10 rupees, I was able to buy 5 apples. So with 20 rupees, I'm obviously able to buy 10 apples. Don't you guys agree with me? Yes or no? Is the logic clear? Right. So this is basically variation. Now guys, remember that there are two parts to it. One is called direct variation. The other is called indirect variation. All right. So we have direct and we have indirect. Now what happens in direct variation, guys? Say I have two quantities A and B. You can take anything. For example, I took the money in my pocket and the apples that I can afford or the apples I can buy. Alright. When the money in my pocket went up from 10 to 20 rupees, the number of apples that I was able to buy also went up from 5 to 10 apples. All of you agree with me? Logically, think logically. We'll come to the mathematical aspect later. Clear? Now, this is the concept of direct variation. Now, what would indirect variation be? Priscilla, can you, no, not Priscilla, Arna. Arna, can you unmute yourself and guess or think about what indirect variation would be? What happens in indirect variation? Can you take a guess?
So, can you repeat what happens in direct variation? I was making a note.
I took an example where I said if the money that I have is increasing from 10 rupees to 20 rupees, the number of apples I can buy in a market will go up from 5 to 10.
Yes.
If I have lesser money, I will have fewer apples.
Yes.
Correct. That was direct variation where if one went up, the other also went up. They were directly related.
Yes, so.
One went down, the other went down. Now, what do you think would happen in inverse or indirect variation?
I think in indirect variation, like the price would go up, but the apples which were sold in minimum, like the actual price would be, like number of apples which were sold in actual price. Sorry, just a second, can I explain again?
Yeah, you're going right. In the first one, we did not talk about the price of apples. Remember, I'm talking about the money that I have. Alright? Because I have more money, I can buy more apples. What you were saying is right. Now continue. What do you think happens in indirect variation?
In indirect variation, I think suppose you have 20 rupees, but actually in those 20 rupees you could have gotten 5 apples, but in this case you'll only get 3.
Why did that happen? Any reason for that to happen?
No.
Isn't a basic reason an increase in the cost of apples, Arna?
Yes.
Exactly. Why didn't you think of that? As simple as that. Indirect variation is nothing else but if one quantity is increasing, the other quantity will decrease, or vice versa. To give you a very classic example, you guys have sat on a vehicle, anyone, all of you obviously. Now, isn't it common sense or isn't it obvious logic that if you go fast, you take lesser time to reach, and if you go slow, you take extra time to reach? Yes or no? Common sense, everyone has observed. Now this is exactly what inverse variation or inverse proportion is, where one quantity increases, the other decreases. When the speed of your vehicle increased, the time that you took to reach the destination decreased. Similarly, when the speed reduced, you took a longer time. Isn't this absolutely clear now? Is everyone
Yes.
with the examples? Guys, put in a yes or a no. Is everyone clear with direct and indirect? Correct. Now guys, have you come across this symbol? Have you guys come across this symbol?
Think so.
This is called proportionality. Now when I say, how do I read this? A is directly proportional to B. That means if A increases, B will increase. If A decreases, B will decrease. Look at the terminology now. And if I say, now how do I read this? A is inversely proportional to B. Yes, Bhavya?
Sir, which symbol were you talking about?
This one, the one in the box. Proportionality.
Sir, I think it means not equal to.
Yes. This is basically telling us the relationship. That is what we were discussing. Speed and time had a relationship. The money that I have in my pocket and the apples that I bought had a relationship. We were discussing relationships. Clear? Is everyone following? Now, how do I read this? I read this as A is inversely proportional to B. What does this mean? If one increases, the other decreases, or if one decreases, the other increases. Is this clear, guys? Is this logic clear? This is the case of the speed of the vehicle and the time taken to reach the same place.
Yes.
Assuming that the distance is the same, if the speed increases, you take lesser time, and if the speed decreases, you take more time. Is that clear?
Yes, sir.
In order to solve an equation, we want it to be equal. We've been seeing this right from simple equations. Now, how do I remove this? How do I remove this and replace it with an equal to? Anyone? Anyone can take a guess? Can anyone take a guess? Yes or no?
So can you repeat the question?
My question is, I wrote A is directly proportional to B and I wrote A is inversely proportional to B. I cannot equate them, I cannot solve them because both of them are not equal. If I have to replace this and put an equal to, what is the change that I'm supposed to make? This is some higher level stuff, so focus and get the concept right, alright? I'll explain it in very simple terms. Now,
Sir?
yes, Priscilla?
So we should make it 1 by A is equal to 1 by B.
Okay, let me tell you. If I have to remove the relationship and make both of them equal, I have to introduce something called a constant. It is called the constant of proportionality. It can be anything. Usually I'm going to say A is equal to K into B, where K is the constant of proportionality. Wait, relax. I'm going to explain. Listen to this. I'm going to take a very simple example and make it very clear for you. This is the reaction even I had when I learned this back then. Listen to me. K is called the constant of proportionality. Remember that when we have to remove a proportionality, we have to introduce a constant. Point number one. Now, why is the question? Why should we do this? If I've just told you introduce a constant, both of them become equal, solve. That makes no sense. You have to understand why. Let me take an example. Let's listen to this example. There is a factory. Alright? There is a factory. And we have the pay of a manager. Okay? And we have the pay of a clerk. People who work at the factory. Now I am going to tell you that the pay, what if I tell you the pay of the manager is directly proportional to the pay of the clerk? What does that mean? If the manager is going to earn more, the salary or the wages of the clerk are also going to increase. Does that make sense to you guys? Is that clear? This is the logic we discussed previously. Yes or no? Put in a quick yes or a quick no. If the salary of the manager increases, the payment of a clerk is also increasing. Now, when the salary of a manager was 20,000 rupees, the salary or the wage of the clerk was 10,000 rupees. I'm taking an example. Now, my next thing is, if the salary of the manager has increased to 40,000, right? The salary or the wage of the clerk has also increased to 20,000. Directly proportional. One goes up, the other is also going up. All of you are following? If the salary of the manager has now become 80,000, the pay of the clerk now becomes 40,000. Everyone still following? Correct. But now, if I write case 1, 20,000 equal to 10,000, you guys are going to get out of the screen and punch me saying, sir, how is 20,000 even equal to 10,000? Right? That is the reason Bhavya said what when I said introduce a constant of proportionality and I use some high level terms. But let me break it down for you guys. Similarly, if I say 40,000 is equal to 20,000, you guys are going to tell that I'm speaking absolute. Bhavya, follow. Don't speak anything, follow. If I write 80,000 equal to 40,000, you guys are still going to disagree with me. Now, in the first case, which number should I multiply by 10,000 to make it equal to 20,000, Bhavya? 10,000 को किससे multiply करूँ to get 20,000? Bhavya, quick.
Yes, sir.
What do I multiply 10,000 with to get 20,000?
Sir, your voice is breaking. I'm not able to understand. Can you repeat that?
Multiply with 10,000 to get 20,000.
10,000. So 1 minute.
Priscilla, can you tell us what I'm supposed to multiply 10,000 with to get 20,000? Jaldi.
Sir, 2.
Right.
2.
Okay. Unmana, can you tell me what I'm supposed to multiply 20,000 with to get 40,000?
2.
Arna, can you tell me what I'm supposed to multiply 40,000 with to get 80,000?
2.
Are things now falling into place? Does the equation now make sense?
Yes, sir.
So what did I do?
Like 20,000. Like 20,000 is double of 10,000, but how is 20,000 equal to 10,000?
20,000 is not equal to 10,000. Oh, I'm saying I wrote that. But how did I make it equal? I multiplied 10,000 with 2 to get it to make it 20,000.
Yes, you wrote equal.
Correct. I wrote that wrong because I was going to introduce the concept of constant of proportionality. Now do the three equations make sense, Arna?
Yes, sir.
Right. That's the reason I was telling that all of you are going to get out of the screen and punch me if I say 20,000 is equal to 10,000. Now, what is this 2? In the first case, I multiplied by 2. In the second case, I multiplied it by 2. In the third case, I multiplied by 2. This isn't 2 a constant term that I am multiplying? What is constant? It does not change. Because of introducing this constant, I changed the proportionality to an equality. This became equal to, and the entire equation now makes sense. Left hand side is now equal to the right hand side. This
Yes,
term is called the constant of proportionality. Is the logic now clear?
yes, sir.
Now do you understand why we introduce a constant to change a relationship into an equation? Is everyone clear? I hope the example was very clear. You didn't understand the question. Priscilla, when we had A is directly proportional to B, when I had the pay of a manager is directly proportional to the pay of a clerk.
Sir,
Yes, Priscilla?
I didn't say that I didn't understand. Bhavya said, why would we punch you?
Okay, ignore
I
that.
said
Ignore that.
that you didn't understand.
Okay, I was just trying to crack a joke. Is this concept clear? Are you very clear with why proportionality can be, how we can introduce a constant and remove proportionality and why we do that? Is the logic clear? Right? Cool. Now guys, let me end the session here.